Woman wakes up from coma, cries upon discovering husband's betrayal with her best friend and decides to take revenge by doing this. The hospital room was silent except for the constant, monotonous sound of the heart monitor. The translucent curtains swayed gently with the light breeze coming through the half-open window. The morning sun filtered through the leaves of the trees outside, casting dancing shadows on Hannah's pale face. She had been lying there for 2 years, trapped in a deep sleep, while the world around her kept spinning. Suddenly, her fingers twitched. A slight tremor ran through her body, as if a new energy was filling her. Her eyes began to open slowly, blinking against the soft light of the room. Hannah's heart beat faster, the sound of the heart monitor speeding up in response. Her mind was hazy, struggling to reconnect with the reality she had left behind. The first moments of consciousness were confusing. Hannah tried to remember where she was, why she was there. Her body was weak, as if every muscle was waking up from a long sleep. She turned her head slowly, her eyes focusing on the indistinct figures around her. The white walls of the hospital, the medical equipment, everything seemed both familiar and strange at the same time. A nurse entered the room, her steps quick and precise. Seeing Hannah awake, she stopped, surprised. "My God, you're awake!" she exclaimed, rushing to the bedside. "I'll call the doctor." The nurse ran out, leaving Hannah alone with her thoughts. The sound of footsteps echoing in the corridor seemed distant, almost unreal. Hannah tried to speak, but her voice was just a hoarse whisper. Her throat was dry, as if it hadn't been used in years. She swallowed with difficulty, feeling a slight pain as she did so. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to organize the fragmented memories that were starting to surface. What had happened? Why was she there? And where was John, her husband? As she waited, flashes of memories began to flood her mind. The car, the accident, the feeling of helplessness as everything went black. She opened her eyes again, this time with renewed determination. She needed to understand what had happened. She needed answers. When the doctor entered the room, followed by the nurse and a group of curious onlookers, Hannah was ready to face them. The doctor smiled gently as he approached. "Welcome back, Hannah. You've been in a coma for 2 years." The words were a shock, but Hannah remained calm. 2 years. So much lost time. She felt a wave of emotions, but clung to the desire to know more. "How do you feel?" the doctor asked, checking her vital signs with precision. "Weak and confused," Hannah replied, her voice a bit stronger now. "What happened to my husband, John? Does he know I've woken up?" The doctor hesitated for a moment, exchanging a quick glance with the nurse. "He's been informed and should arrive soon," he finally said. "But for now, let's focus on your recovery. There are many things you need to know, but all in due time." Hannah nodded slowly, feeling exhausted. She closed her eyes again, trying to process the enormity of the situation. 2 years of her life had passed in the blink of an eye, and she was waking up to a world that could be completely different from what she knew. But one thing was certain. She needed to see John, to hear the truth, directly from him. And then, maybe, she could start to piece her life back together. Hannah spent the following days recovering, her body gradually regaining strength. The hospital was full of familiar and unfamiliar faces, but the one face she most longed to see was John's. However, his visits were short and tense, his behavior strange and evasive. Something wasn't right, and Hannah's unease grew day by day. So one afternoon, while she was alone in her room, Hannah heard the door open softly. She turned her head and saw Bella, her best friend, entering with a hesitant smile. "Hannah, it's so good to see you awake," Bella said, approaching the bed. Hannah smiled, but there was an uncomfortable feeling in the air. "Thank you, Bella. I'm happy to see you too," she replied, trying to hide her suspicion. The two talked for a few minutes, but there was an underlying tension that Hannah couldn't ignore. When Bella finally left, she left behind a feeling of unease that wouldn't go away. Something was wrong, and Hannah felt she needed to find out what it was. She decided to investigate discreetly, taking advantage of the moments when she was alone. One night while the hospital was quiet, Hannah took the cell phone that John had left with her. He had said it was set up to help her catch up on what she had missed. But Hannah had another plan. She accessed messages and emails looking for anything that would explain John's and Bella's strange behavior. And then she found it. A series of messages between John and Bella, full of affectionate and intimate words which made it clear about their relationship. Each message was a stab to Hannah's heart, revealing the depth of the betrayal. Tears streamed down her face as she read, the world crumbling around her. Hannah felt suffocated by the pain and anger. How could they do this to her? For 2 years, while she was helpless in a coma, John and Bella were cruelly betraying her trust. The devastating discovery left Hannah in pieces, but also planted a seed of determination in her heart. In the following days, Hannah pretended normality. She smiled at the doctors and nurses, talked amiably with John and Bella, all while scheming a plan for revenge. Her heart was broken, but her mind was sharp. She knew she couldn't confront them directly. That would be giving them the power to see her pain. Instead, she would choose the path of manipulation, silent strategy. Every word, every gesture of Hannah was carefully calculated to hide her true intentions. She watched them closely, learning their routines and identifying their weaknesses. When John hugged her, she returned the gesture with affection, even though inside she felt repulsion. When Bella visited, Hannah smiled and chatted, disguising the anger boiling in her chest. Hannah began to plant seeds of doubt and mistrust between John and Bella, small insinuations that slowly created cracks in their trust. It was a dangerous game, but she was willing to take the risk. She wanted them to experience the pain and betrayal she had felt, to suffer the consequences of their actions. She manipulated situations so that John and Bella would misunderstand each other, taking advantage of every opportunity to create discord between them. Each day, she saw their relationship deteriorate a little more, and this gave her a sense of control, a way of dealing with her own pain. However, this pursuit of revenge was also consuming her, and she knew she would need strength not to lose herself completely in the process. As she observed the results of her manipulations, Hannah felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Revenge was sweet, but it also soured her soul. Hannah spent her days in the hospital pretending a smooth recovery. On the outside, she displayed a calm smile and kind words, but inside, her soul was in turmoil. Every time John entered the room with his forced smile, she felt a mixture of nausea and anger. Bella, her former friend, was even harder to face. Their betrayal burned inside her, turning every moment into a torturous exercise of control. Determined not to be a helpless victim, Hannah began to plan. She knew that confronting John and Bella directly would not be enough. She needed something deeper, more devastating. She wanted them to feel the same pain she did, for their lives to be shattered like hers. She began to sketch out a meticulous revenge plan, each detail carefully considered. Hannah knew that the key to her revenge lay in subtle manipulation. She couldn't act impulsively. She needed to be patient and strategic. First, she focused on creating an environment of mistrust between the two. Small, seemingly innocent comments, significant looks, subtle gestures, all carefully orchestrated to sow doubts. Every word spoken by Hannah was a step toward her ultimate goal. She began to exploit John's weaknesses at work. Using information she had collected over the years, she manipulated situations so that he made critical mistakes. She contacted his colleagues, planting seeds of mistrust and suggesting that he wasn't as competent as he appeared. Gradually, John's image at work began to tarnish, and he felt the pressure mounting. With Bella, Hannah's approach was different. She knew her friend valued public image and social acceptance above all else. So, she began to subtly expose their affair to the community. Small rumors spread with surgical precision, innocent conversations that suggested inappropriate behavior. Bella began to notice strange looks, whispers behind her back. The perfect facade she maintained was starting to crack. With every move, Hannah felt more in control. Her heart was still wounded, but the pain was being replaced by a cold determination. With every failure of John, with every suspicious look Bella received, Hannah felt a small victory. They were experiencing the betrayal and isolation she felt, and that gave her a sense of justice. Hannah continued to feign friendship and love while her plan unfolded. John and Bella, increasingly pressured, began to argue with each other. The arguments became frequent. The smiles disappeared. Their relationship, which had flourished at the expense of her pain, was starting to crumble. Hannah watched it all with bitter satisfaction, a reflection of her own transformation. But revenge was also taking its toll. Each step in her plan distanced her further from who she was. The nights became even lonelier, the days filled with a growing sense of emptiness. She began to question if the destruction of John and Bella would really bring the peace she desired. However, the wheel of revenge was already in motion, and she couldn't stop now. As she watched the misunderstandings and distrust grow between John and Bella, Hannah felt a complex mix of emotions. There was a certain pleasure in seeing them suffer, but also a deep sadness at how much her own life had changed. Revenge was consuming her, turning her into someone she barely recognized. But the pain of betrayal was a constant reminder of why she was doing this. After weeks of recovery in the hospital, Hannah was finally discharged. 2 months had passed since she woke up from the coma, and although her body was still weak, her determination was stronger than ever. As she left the hospital, John helped her settle in at home, trying to show a normalcy that Hannah knew was false. Bella, always present, showed herself as a concerned friend, but Hannah saw beyond the masks they both wore. Once at home, Hannah began to meticulously plan her revenge. She knew the first seed of discord needed to be planted with precision and subtlety. After weeks of observation, she found the perfect opportunity. John had an important meeting at work, a presentation that could determine his future at the company. Bella, on the other hand, had a social event that same night, something she couldn't miss. Hannah decided to use these moments to her advantage. On the morning of the meeting, Hannah approached John with a loving smile. "Good luck today, love. I know you'll do great in the presentation," she said, handing him a lucky charm he always carried during important moments. John smiled, grateful, and put the charm in his pocket. Hannah watched him leave, feeling a pang of guilt that quickly dissipated when she thought of his betrayal. With John gone, Hannah turned to Bella. She knew her friend would stop by the house to pick up a dress she had left there. When Bella arrived, she found Hannah apparently absorbed in a trivial task. "Hi, Hannah. I need to get my dress. It's in the guest room," Bella said with a tense smile. Hannah nodded, pretending a cordiality she didn't feel. While Bella headed to the room, Hannah started fiddling with her cell phone, pretending to be distracted. As soon as Bella disappeared down the hallway, Hannah quickly got up and went to John's office. She knew he had the habit of leaving important documents on the desk. She found the presentation draft still open, with handwritten notes. In a calculated impulse, Hannah displaced some papers, creating the impression that something was out of place. Returning to the couch, Hannah picked up Bella's cell phone that was on the table. She quickly opened the messaging app and typed a message to John. "Good luck today, dear. I know you'll do well. I'm looking forward to celebrating later. Bella." She sent the message and quickly deleted the history, ensuring that Bella wouldn't know the message had been sent. When Bella returned, she found Hannah exactly where she had left her. They exchanged a few words and Bella left hurriedly, suspecting nothing. Hannah felt an adrenaline rush through her body. The first seed of discord had been planted. Now, it was just a matter of waiting to see how things would unfold. At work, John was nervous but confident. He took the charm out of his pocket and smiled, remembering Hannah's support. However, when he opened the folder to review his documents, he noticed something was wrong. Some papers were out of order and the notes he needed were missing. A wave of panic engulfed him. He tried to reorganize everything quickly, but time was against him. During the presentation, John stammered and lost track several times. His superiors exchanged worried looks and he felt the weight of expectations crumbling over him. In the end, he left the room feeling defeated. When he checked his cell phone, he found Bella's message. "Good luck today, dear. I know you'll do well. I'm looking forward to celebrating later." The message seemed out of place, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Meanwhile, Bella was at the social event, feeling disconnected and uneasy. She tried to focus on the conversations around her, but the feeling that something was wrong persisted. John hadn't responded to her message, which was unusual. She tried calling him, but got no answer. The unease turned into anxiety. When John arrived home that night, he was exhausted and irritated. Bella arrived shortly after, and the tension between them was palpable. "How was your meeting?" Bella asked, trying to sound casual. John looked at her, his expression weary. "It was a disaster. Some of my documents went missing and I couldn't focus, and that message from you, what was that?" Bella frowned, confused. "What message?" "Good luck today, dear. I know you'll do well. I'm looking forward to celebrating later." "It completely threw me off," John said, throwing the cell phone on the table. Bella picked up the device, looking at the message in surprise. "I didn't send that," she protested, feeling a chill down her spine. "I swear I didn't send it." Hannah watched everything from her room, listening to the argument escalate. The first seed of discord had sprouted, creating a crack in their trust. John and Bella began to argue more heatedly, each trying to understand what was happening. The day started with palpable tension in Hannah and John's house. The air seemed charged with electricity, ready to explode at any moment. Hannah, with a calculated look, continued her morning routine while John barely exchanged a word. The argument from the previous night still hung over him like a dark cloud, and distrust had begun to take root. That morning, Hannah decided it was time to uncover more lies. She knew that John checked his work emails in the kitchen while having coffee and took advantage of the opportunity. She silently went upstairs to the office and accessed John's computer. With skills he didn't know she had, she accessed his email account and started looking for something she could use. She found a series of emails exchanged between John and a coworker discussing confidential company matters. Hannah printed the emails, erasing any trace of her action, and went downstairs with the evidence hidden in a book. She knew she had to wait for the right moment to drop the next bomb. Later, while John was at work, Hannah decided to meet with an old friend, Clara, who worked at the same company as John. She called Clara for a coffee, knowing that their friendship and Clara's position could be advantageous. With a confident air, she handed Clara the printed emails. "I thought you should see this," Hannah said with a false concern in her eyes. Clara was shocked to see the confidential information being discussed by email. "This could cause serious trouble for John," Clara murmured, looking at Hannah with a mix of pity and disbelief. "Why are you showing me this?" Hannah sighed, pretending reluctance. "He's my husband, Clara, but I think he needs to face the consequences of his actions." The next day, the news about John's confidential emails began to spread in the company. John was called to an emergency meeting where his superiors demanded explanations. He defended himself as best as he could, but the evidence was incriminating. His reputation, already shaken by the disastrous presentation, was quickly disintegrating. The public humiliation was devastating, and John left the meeting with his head down, feeling defeated. Meanwhile, Bella was increasingly disturbed by the growing mistrust between her and John. She began to notice small things that had previously gone unnoticed: whispers among colleagues, disapproving looks at social events. Everything seemed to point to something happening in the shadows, something she couldn't fully understand. Hannah, noticing Bella's vulnerability, decided it was time to strike another blow. She approached Bella with a genuine-looking expression of concern. "Bella, we need to talk. I discovered something about John that you need to know," she said, holding Bella's hands. The hesitation in her voice was perfectly rehearsed, and Bella felt a chill down her spine. Hannah revealed that she had seen John at a restaurant in a suspicious meeting with an unknown woman. "I didn't want to believe it, but they were very intimate," Hannah said, her eyes welling up. Bella turned pale, her heart racing. The idea that John might be cheating on her while she was betraying Hannah was a deep and cruel blow. Bella confronted John that night, and the argument was explosive. John, already shaken by the problems at work, couldn't contain his anger and frustration. "You think I'm the traitor here? What about you, Bella? How many lies have you told?" John's accusation sent Bella into a panic spiral. She tried to defend herself, but his words were like knives, cutting deep. Hannah heard the fight from upstairs, each shout and accusation confirming that her plan was working. John and Bella were destroying each other, and she was the only one who knew the whole truth. The pain she felt turned into a dark sense of justice, a realization that, finally, the lies were being exposed. In the days that followed, John began to watch Bella with distrustful eyes. Every move she made seemed suspicious, every word a possible lie. Bella, in turn, grew increasingly paranoid, fearing that John might discover her secret at any moment. The trust between them had been irreparably broken, and each lived in fear of the next blow. While the tension between John and Bella increased, Hannah delved deeper into her plan for revenge. She rummaged through the darkest corners of her memory, trying to recall the details of the accident that put her in a coma. Something didn't fit, and Hannah's intuition pushed her to seek answers. The restlessness in her heart grew, like a shadow she couldn't ignore. One afternoon, while reorganizing old documents in the attic, Hannah found a dusty box that seemed out of place. Inside, there were insurance papers, medical reports, and, to her surprise, a detailed accident report. Her hands trembled as she opened the report, and she began to read every line carefully. The words jumped off the page, revealing a truth that left her cold. The report described that the accident wasn't just a matter of bad luck. There was evidence that the brakes on Hannah's car had been tampered with. The mechanic who inspected the car after the accident suspected foul play, but the investigation was inconclusive, and the case was closed. Hannah's mind spun with questions. Who would have done this? And why? Hannah knew she needed to find out more. She remembered a security camera on the street near the accident site and decided to look for the recordings. With the help of a private detective friend, she got access to the footage. Watching the video, her heart stopped for a moment. There was Bella, a few days before the accident, standing next to Hannah's car, looking nervous and suspicious. The pieces began to fit together in a horrible way. Bella had access to Hannah's car, and her presence in the video couldn't be a coincidence. The idea that her best friend could have sabotaged her brakes was unimaginable, but the evidence was irrefutable. Hannah felt a mix of anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. Determined to confront Bella, Hannah waited until the evening when John wasn't home. She called Bella for a talk and showed her the footage. "Explain this," Hannah said, her voice cold and controlled. Bella looked at the video, pale and trembling, unable to hide the panic in her eyes. "Hannah, I can explain," she stammered, but the words died on her lips. "Did you sabotage my car?" Hannah asked, the anger rising like a tide. Bella began to cry, confessing between sobs. "I didn't want to hurt you. I swear. I was desperate, jealous of you and John. I thought if you were out of the way, he would love me more. But I didn't want this to happen, not like this." Hannah felt a sharp pain hearing the confession. Bella, The person she trusted not only betrayed her friendship and stole her husband, but also tried to take her life. The weight of the revelation was crushing, but Hannah didn't let the pain cloud her determination. "You will not get away with this, Bella," she said, her voice firm. "I will make sure you pay for everything." Bella, desperate and cornered, tried to beg for forgiveness, but Hannah had no compassion left to give. The love she once felt for her friend had turned into something bitter and irreparable. Bella left the house in tears, leaving Hannah alone with her thoughts. The revelation of the accident had changed everything, adding a deeper, darker layer to her quest for justice. The days following Bella's confession were full of tension. Hannah knew the revelation about the accident was just the beginning. She needed more proof, something that could definitively expose Bella's true nature to John and everyone around her. Determined, Hannah began to dig deeper into Bella's recent past, scrutinizing every detail of her life. One night, while searching the attic again, Hannah found an old diary of Bella's. The pages were filled with notes, thoughts, and secrets. As she read, she discovered more than she expected. Bella had written about her insecurities, her feelings for John, and to Hannah's shock, there were several entries detailing her previous attempts to sabotage the relationship between Hannah and John. One entry, in particular, caught Hannah's attention. Bella described a night when, in a fit of jealousy and anger, she drugged Hannah during a party. Hannah vaguely remembered that night, how she felt strangely drowsy and confused. Bella hoped that by doing this she could compromise Hannah in some way. But the plans never worked. This was a clear pattern of manipulation and betrayal, deeper than Hannah had imagined. With the diary in hand, Hannah knew she had the perfect weapon to expose Bella. She decided to wait for the right opportunity to reveal everything. And that opportunity came faster than she expected. John, pressured and confused by the constant tension and recent disasters at work, arranged a dinner to try to clarify things with Bella and Hannah. During the dinner, the atmosphere was tense. John tried to maintain a normal conversation, but the tension between Bella and Hannah was palpable. Hannah, waiting for the right moment, finally stood up, holding Bella's diary. "John, there's something you need to know. Something that changes everything," she said, her voice firm, but loaded with emotion. Bella turned pale, knowing exactly what was coming. "Hannah, please don't," she begged. But Hannah didn't stop. She began reading the most incriminating passages from the diary, revealing Bella's manipulations, her attempts to sabotage Hannah and John's relationship, and finally, the confession about the accident. John listened in silence, his face shifting from disbelief to anger, and finally, to deep disgust. "How could you, Bella? I trusted you," he shouted, his voice echoing through the room. Bella, in tears, tried to justify herself, but her words were empty and desperate. And then the big twist happened. Bella, cornered and with no way out, revealed an unexpected secret. "John, do you think I'm the only one to blame? Ask Hannah about what she did while she was in a coma." John and Hannah looked at Bella, confused. Bella continued, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "Hannah wasn't just waiting. She was conscious, listening to everything. She knew about us and used that to manipulate you." John turned to Hannah, perplexed. "Is it true?" he asked, the pain evident in his eyes. Hannah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. I heard some things, yes, but that doesn't change what Bella did," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. But the doubt was planted. Bella's revelation had cast a shadow of uncertainty over the entire situation. John, now confused and betrayed by both sides, left the dinner abruptly, unable to deal with the flood of revelations. Hannah stood still, holding the diary, feeling that the revenge she had sought so much was turning into a nightmare. Bella, broken and defenseless, left in tears, leaving Hannah alone in the silent room. The big twist had exposed not only Bella's true guilt, but also the complex layers of betrayal and manipulation that involved everyone. The days following Bella's revelation were pure turmoil. John was visibly shaken, his trust in Hannah and Bella destroyed. Hannah knew she needed to act quickly to expose the complete truth before Bella could manipulate the situation further. Determined, she began planning a public exposure that would destroy Bella's reputation and, consequently, John's. Hannah prepared an event in the community, a charity party that traditionally gathered all the influential members of the local society. Using her manipulation skills, she convinced John to attend, ensuring it would be an opportunity to show a facade of normality. Bella was also invited, but she didn't know what was coming. On the day of the event, the hall was filled with guests, conversations, and laughter filling the air. Hannah dressed elegantly, hiding her anxiety with a confident smile. John, at her side, seemed distracted, still dealing with the emotional storm that Bella had triggered. Bella arrived a little later, her nervous demeanor revealing her state of mind. Hannah waited for the right moment. When everyone's attention was on the main stage, she stepped up and took the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here on this special night. I have some important things to share," she began, her voice firm. The hall fell silent, all eyes on her. She began to talk about the importance of truth and integrity, setting the stage for what was to come. "Recently, I discovered things that deeply disturbed me. Truths about people I considered close, people I trusted," she said, her gaze fixed on Bella. The tension in the hall grew with each word. "I found out that Bella, my supposed friend, not only betrayed my trust, but also tried to take my life. She sabotaged my car, leading to the accident that left me in a coma for 2 years," revealed Hannah, her voice full of emotion. The shocked murmur of the guests filled the hall. Bella turned pale, her eyes wide with panic. Hannah continued, revealing the evidence she had found, including Bella's diary entries and the mechanic's report. Every word was a blow, destroying the carefully constructed public image of Bella. "She betrayed me with my own husband and tried to kill me to get what she wanted. This is the real Bella," concluded Hannah, showing a recording of Bella's confessions projected on a large screen. The room exploded in murmurs, people incredulous at what they were hearing and seeing. Bella tried to defend herself, but her words were drowned out by the wave of indignation. John, standing next to Hannah, seemed to be in shock. His expression was one of deep pain, realizing how much he had been deceived. The guests began to confront Bella, their voices full of anger and contempt. She tried to escape but was stopped by a group of people demanding explanations. Bella's reputation was completely destroyed, and she knew she could never regain the community's respect or trust. The truth had been exposed so publicly and devastatingly that there was no turning back. Hannah, although feeling some relief at seeing Bella finally facing the consequences of her actions, did not find the satisfaction she expected. The look of pain and betrayal in John's eyes hit her deeply. He was as hurt as she was, if not more. The public revelation had destroyed not only Bella but also the man she once loved. John, unable to deal with the humiliation and pain, left the event without looking back. Hannah watched him leave, feeling an overwhelming emptiness. The revenge she had so sought had materialized, but at the cost of her own happiness and peace of mind. The public exposure and the destruction of Bella's reputation brought justice, but also a new form of suffering. Bella, now completely ruined, was escorted out of the event, her name forever tarnished. The community rejected her, and she found herself alone and helpless. Her true guilt had been exposed irrevocably, leaving her friendless, unsupported, and without a future. As the hall began to empty, Hannah stood alone on the stage, reflecting on everything that had happened. Revenge had been bitter, and justice cold. She realized that although Bella and John had paid for their betrayals, she was also paying a high price. The public exposure and the ruin of reputations did not bring the peace she so longed for. John left the charity event completely devastated. Hannah's revelations hit him like a mortal blow. He wandered the streets of the city, lost in dark thoughts. His life, already in disarray, now seemed completely destroyed. Bella's confessions, the public exposure, and his wife's betrayal had created a perfect storm, leaving him directionless. In the days that followed, John isolated himself from the world. He locked himself at home, avoiding any contact with coworkers, friends, or even Hannah. The shame and humiliation were unbearable. The phone rang incessantly with calls from his boss and worried colleagues, but he had no strength to answer. His career, already in jeopardy, now seemed completely lost. John spent most of his time drinking, trying to drown his pain in bottles of whiskey. The house he and Hannah had shared became a place of torment, full of memories of happier times that now seemed like ghosts of the past. Every corner of the house whispered stories of love and trust that had been destroyed. One night, in a state of deep intoxication, John looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized himself. His eyes were red and swollen, his beard unkempt, and his face reflected a deep sadness. He fell to his knees, tears streaming freely. How did it come to this? He murmured to himself, not expecting an answer. The pressure at work was also increasing. Emails and messages piled up, demanding explanations about the leaked confidential emails. John knew he needed to face the consequences, but the will to fight had disappeared. He felt like a drifting boat, without a rudder, without direction. The company, once a place of pride and achievement, was now just another source of stress and pain. In a moment of desperation, John finally answered the phone. On the other end was Clara, a co-worker who had always been friendly and understanding. "John, we need to talk. I can't imagine what you're going through, but hiding won't solve anything," she said, her voice full of concern. John agreed to meet her, feeling he had nothing more to lose. The meeting with Clara was a turning point. They met in a discreet cafe, where Clara listened patiently as John vented. He told her everything: the affair with Bella, Hannah's betrayal, the public exposure. Clara listened with empathy without judging. "John, you made mistakes, but that doesn't mean your life is over. You can find a way to rise again, but you have to want it," she said, holding his hand. Clara's words awakened something in John. He realized that despite the pain and shame, there was still a chance for redemption. He decided to seek professional help, starting therapy to deal with his depression and alcohol dependence. The first steps were difficult, but he was determined not to let the darkness win. Meanwhile, Hannah watched from afar, feeling a mix of guilt and compassion. She never imagined her revenge would lead John to such a deplorable state. Despite his betrayal, she could not ignore the fact that she still cared for him. Seeing him so destroyed made her question whether the justice she sought was really worth all this suffering. In therapy, John began to confront his inner demons. He talked about his insecurities, his fears, and finally began to understand the roots of his actions. Each session was a battle, but also a step towards recovery. He started to rebuild his self-esteem, piece by piece, learning to forgive himself. Over time, John also began to repair damaged relationships. He sincerely apologized to his coworkers, explaining the situation and taking responsibility for his actions. Some forgave him, others did not, but he was determined to move forward. He accepted the consequences at work and began to look for ways to regain lost trust. The relationship with Hannah was the most complicated of all. They lived under the same roof but as strangers. The conversations were short and tense, the silence heavy. However, both knew they needed to face the past to have any chance of a future, together or apart. They decided to seek couples therapy, hoping to find a way to heal the deep wounds they both carried. Hannah was in her room, staring out the window. The public revelation and John's subsequent collapse had left her in a state of deep introspection. She spent the days recalling every detail of the plan she had devised, every decision made in the name of justice. The pain of seeing John at rock bottom was more intense than she could have ever predicted. One night, While flipping through old photo albums, Hannah found a letter she had written to herself while in the hospital, shortly after waking from the coma. In it, she detailed her feelings of helplessness, betrayal, and the need for revenge. But among the lines of anger, there was also a line of hope, a small but significant reminder of the love she once shared with John. With tears in her eyes, Hannah realized that despite everything, there was still a trace of love for John. He had made unforgivable mistakes, but the revenge she sought did not bring the peace she expected. Instead, it only deepened the chasm between them. Determined to find a solution, Hannah knew she needed to reveal the truth about her own journey. She arranged a meeting with John at a discreet cafe, the same one where he had met Clara. When John arrived, he looked tired, but there was a new determination in his eyes. They sat in silence for a few moments, the noise of the cafe around them providing a temporary distraction. "John," Hannah began, her voice soft but firm. "There is something I need to tell you, something that may change everything." John looked at her with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What is it, Hannah?" he asked, his voice full of caution. Hannah took a deep breath, seeking the courage to continue. "When I was in a coma, I could hear some things. I was aware of part of what was happening around me," she confessed. John frowned, surprised. "You knew? All this time?" he asked, incredulous. Hannah nodded slowly. "Yes, I knew some things. I heard about you and Bella, and that motivated me to seek revenge when I woke up." John remained silent, processing the information. Hannah's revelation added a new layer of complexity to the situation. "So, you knew I was cheating on you and still chose to manipulate everything for revenge?" he asked, the pain evident in his voice. Hannah looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "Yes, John. But now I realize that revenge did not bring the peace I hoped for. It only increased our pain." Hannah then revealed Bella's diary, placing it on the table between them. "Here is everything Bella did. Her manipulations, her attempts to hurt me, but most importantly, we both allowed this to happen," she said, her voice breaking. John took the diary, flipping through the pages with trembling hands. "I'm not trying to justify my actions, John. I just want you to understand that the pain I felt led me to do things I now deeply regret." Hannah continued. "The truth is, despite everything, there is still a part of me that loves you. And that hurts me even more." John looked at Hannah, his eyes reflecting a mixture of emotions. He knew they both had made terrible mistakes, but Hannah's honesty opened a small door to the possibility of reconciliation. "Hannah, I have also done terrible things. I betrayed your trust, and that is something I will carry forever," he said, his voice full of remorse. The two remained silent, allowing the gravity of the moment to settle. Finally, John spoke, his voice low but firm. "We need to find a way to move forward, Hannah. Maybe we can never go back to what we were, but we can try to build something new, something based on truth." Hannah nodded, feeling a weight lifted from her shoulders. "I want that too, John. I want to find a way to heal, even if it means starting from scratch," she said, hope finally shining in her eyes. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, full of challenges and disappointments, but for the first time there was a spark of hope. The following days were marked by difficult and honest conversations. They opened up to each other in ways they never had before, sharing their pains, regrets, and hopes. Couples therapy became a routine, a safe place where they could confront their emotions and work on their relationship. As they worked together to rebuild their lives, Hannah and John began to find a new way to connect. It was not the same love they had before, but a more mature version, based on understanding and forgiveness. Hannah's revelation, though painful, had been the first step toward a new journey. The months following Hannah's revelation were intense and full of challenges. John and Hannah continued with couples therapy, each session revealing deep layers of hurt, regret, and, surprisingly, love. The road to reconciliation was long and winding, but they were determined to walk this path together. John, who initially struggled to accept Hannah's confessions, began to see the pain and despair that motivated her. He saw the sincerity in her eyes, and although the betrayal still hurt him deeply, he felt a growing compassion. The therapy sessions were crucial for him to start seeing the humanity in Hannah's actions, understanding that her revenge was a reflection of the intense pain she felt. One night, after a particularly emotional session, John and Hannah decided to take a walk in the park where they used to go in the early years of their marriage. The cool night air and the soft sound of leaves in the wind brought a sense of nostalgia. They walked in silence, side by side, allowing the peace of the moment to envelop them. "John," Hannah began, stopping and turning to him. "I know we may never be able to erase what happened, but I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to regain your trust." John looked at her, seeing the sincerity and vulnerability in her gaze. "Hannah, I also want to move forward, and as difficult as it is, I'm beginning to realize that forgiving you is the only way for us to find peace." Those words marked a turning point. Although forgiveness was a slow process, John's willingness to forgive signaled a new beginning. From that moment on, they committed to rebuilding their relationship on more solid foundations. They began to dedicate more time to each other, reviving old hobbies and discovering new common interests. Hannah, in turn, began to work on herself more deeply. Individual therapy helped her confront her own demons and understand the roots of her pain and anger. She wanted to be a better person, not only for John, but also for herself. Every small progress she made was a step toward healing. John began to see the changes in Hannah. He noticed how she was more open, more willing to listen and communicate honestly. These small gestures began to rebuild the trust between them. The nights when they discussed their hopes and fears became precious moments, reinforcing the bond they thought was lost forever. One of the most significant moments in this reconciliation process occurred when John took Hannah to the accident site. They stopped by the roadside, where the marks of the past were still visible. "I needed to come back here," said John, holding Hannah's hand. "We need to face our ghosts so we can move forward." Hannah looked at him, feeling the depth of the moment. "I'm sorry, John, for everything, for the pain, the anger, the revenge," she said, tears in her eyes. John pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling the sincerity in her words. "I am also sorry, Hannah, for not being the husband you deserved. But I'm here now, and I want to make this work." Forgiveness was not a single event, but a series of small gestures and actions that together began to heal the open wounds. John learned to let go of resentment, recognizing that holding on to that pain only prolonged his suffering. And Hannah, seeing John's willingness to forgive her, found the strength to keep fighting for their relationship. Over time, they began to make plans for the future. They decided to renew their vows, not as an attempt to erase the past, but as a commitment to move forward with a more mature and resilient love. The ceremony was simple, surrounded only by their closest friends and family, those who had witnessed their struggles and triumphs. During the ceremony, John looked into Hannah's eyes and made a promise. "I promise to be by your side, in good times and bad. I promise to work every day to be worthy of your love and trust. And above all, I promise to forgive, not only you, but also myself, for everything we've been through." But before the vows, John had prepared a special surprise. He took Hannah to the same cafe where they had had so many important conversations over the years. On stage, he set up a microphone and asked for everyone's attention. With a guitar in hand, he began to play a melody he had composed especially for her. "This song is for you, Hannah," he said, his voice trembling. "It is my way of asking for forgiveness, of showing how much I regret hurting you." He began to play, the music loaded with emotion, each note a confession, each word an apology. The lyrics spoke of regret, but also of hope and renewed love. Hannah felt tears streaming down her face as she listened. John's voice, full of sincerity and vulnerability, touched her heart. When he finished the song, the entire cafe applauded, but all Hannah saw was the man determined to win back her love and trust. They embraced, the words of forgiveness and love, unspoken, but deeply felt. This moment was a powerful symbol of the new beginning they were building together. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the house that now symbolized not just a physical place, but also the stage of a profound transformation. John and Hannah sat on the porch, watching the colors of the twilight reflecting on the intense and emotional journey they had traveled. Hannah, holding a cup of tea, looked at John and felt a wave of gratitude. "Do you remember when we moved here? We had so many dreams," she said with a melancholic smile. John nodded, holding her hand tenderly. "Yes, I remember. And despite everything, we still have dreams, Hannah. Only now they are more real, more anchored in truth." In the months following the vow renewal, both continued to work on their personal issues and their relationship. John, still attending therapy, had become a more introspective and empathetic man. He began to see beyond his own pains, recognizing Hannah's needs and learning to be a more supportive and present partner. Hannah had also changed significantly. She continued to explore her passions, rediscovering hobbies she had abandoned and finding new ways to express her creativity. Writing became an outlet, and she began to document her healing journey, hoping to help others facing similar traumas. One morning, while flipping through one of her writing notebooks, Hannah found a poem she had written shortly after waking from the coma. The words, laden with pain and despair, starkly contrasted with what she felt now. She decided to share the poem with John as a way to show how much they had evolved. "John, I want to show you something," she said, handing him the notebook. John read the poem in silence, feeling the depth of the pain Hannah had felt. When he finished, he looked at her with eyes full of understanding. "You went through so much, Hannah. And yet, here we are, together." "Yes," she replied with a smile. "And that's why I wrote this." She picked up another notebook and read aloud a new poem, speaking of hope, forgiveness, and rebirth. The words were a testament to her resilience and the love that, despite everything, had survived. One night as they walked through the garden they had planted together, John suddenly stopped. "Hannah, I never apologized in a way you deserved," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I betrayed you, hurt you deeply, and for that I'm truly sorry. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing how much I love and value you." Hannah felt tears streaming down her face. "John, I forgive you. And I also apologize for everything I did. We are rebuilding. And that is what matters now." They embraced, feeling the strength of their renewed love. As the days turned into weeks and then into months, their lives began to stabilize. Trust, though fragile at first, grew stronger. They learned to communicate more openly and honestly, and the fights that were once storms turned into productive dialogues. They decided to open a small cafe in the city, a place where they could create new memories and share their redemption story with others. The cafe became a symbol of their new beginning, a space where love and hope were served with every cup of coffee. The name they chose for the cafe was Restart, a tribute to the journey that brought them there. On the opening day, the cafe was full of friends, family, and community members who had witnessed their journey. John and Hannah, holding hands, thanked everyone for their support. "This cafe is more than a business to us," said John, his voice emotional. "It is a symbol that even in the worst storms, it is possible to find a new beginning." Hannah, holding the microphone, added, "Life tested us in ways we never imagined, but together, we found the strength to forgive and move forward. We hope this cafe will be a place where everyone can find a bit of hope and inspiration." As the years passed, the cafe Restart thrived, becoming a gathering place for those seeking a second chance in life. John and Hannah continued to grow together, facing challenges with renewed resilience and a love that deepened every day. And so amid the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of laughter and conversations, John and Hannah wrote a new chapter of their lives. A chapter where the pain of the past gave way to the hope of the future, where regret turned into learning, and above all, where love prevailed. The sun continued to set, but for John and Hannah, it was just the beginning of a new dawn. Sitting on the porch, holding hands, they watched the stars appear in the night sky, knowing that together, they could face anything the future might bring. The unlikely forgiveness had turned into an unbreakable love, and the new beginning they sought had finally arrived. If you enjoyed the incredible story of Hannah and John, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. If you love exciting chronicles and want to support our channel to continue bringing more quality content, consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the first pinned comment. Your help is essential for us to continue improving. Thank you for your support. See you in the next exciting chronicle.